let us begin the study of Vata, Pitta, and Kapha effects on the first house. So already the generics are given, the basics are given. We are doing a deep dive study, yeah? So please keep up with it. Which are the Vata planets, which we spoke of? Rahu, Ketu, Saturn, mainly Saturn. He's the kingpin. Venus and Moon both have Vata and Kapha effects. So we shall see how this plays out later on. Okay. So Vata effects on the first house. Remember, first house or the ascendant house is always the biggest because it affects entire physiology. So if you recap, it's a psyche, physiology, constitution, complexion, vitality, longevity, strength, physical strength, vigor, appearance, body appearance of all kinds, intuition, brain, skull. In terms of physical appearance, it is also the forehead, it is the pituitary gland inside, the master gland it is called, pituitary gland. And all the hormones associated with it, it is also the frontal cortex. So when first house Vata increases, meaning to say, if any of these planets or points are situated in that house, Vata will increase, especially if it is conjoined with Saturn, because it's dominantly a Vata planet. Vata is dry, it's light, it's mobile, it's irregular, it's subtle, and it's cold. Therefore, when Vata rises in the Lagna, the entire identity becomes unstable, ungrounded, and irregular. It's like the wind, okay? Vata is like the wind. Because Lagna rules constitution and vitality, we'll talk in terms of physical expression, mental, and emotional, three fronts, and we'll summarize it for every house. Okay, this is the path forward. So first, the physical expression. Because Lagna rules constitution and vitality, the energy here, if Vata increases, becomes inconsistent, which is to say, bursts of activity followed by sudden exhaustion, reduced physical strength, or feeling quote-unquote drained. Dry skin, cracking joints, rough texture, visible depletion, weight fluctuation and unintended weight loss, restlessness in the body posture, tremors, muscle twitching, and internal vibration. Cold sensitivity. These people become very sensitive to cold climates, for example, wind. Variable appetite. It's fluctuating. See, there's an energy of fluctuation when Vata becomes increased in any house. Constipation, bloating, gas. Systemic Vata pattern is having a lot of gas issues. Irregular sleep, difficulty falling asleep because mind is very restless. This is also the frontal cortex, isn't it? There's too much activity there. The head region, since Lagna rules skull and brain. There you go. Tension headaches that shift locations of shifting pain within the headache patterns. Scalp dryness, especially if Saturn is there. Saturn is always a very dry planet. So in the Mahadasha, Antardasha of Saturn, there will be dryness. Neck stiffness of all kinds. Lightheadedness. That's the physical part when Vata increases in the first house. What about the mental expression? Again, with respect to frontal cortex, because we are talking with respect to house only. The frontal cortex governs planning, impulse control, and executive function. Therefore, when Vata rises here, it becomes racing thoughts. It becomes over-analysis, especially if Saturn and Moon are conjoined with Rahu and Ketu. Rahu or Ketu, of course. Difficulty completing tasks, easily distracted, scattered decision making, creative bursts without sustained execution. Remember, the dominant Vata here is Rahu, Saturn, and Ketu. They are pure Vata type energies, very strong. So if any one of these land up in Lagna, this will be showing up very strongly. Scattered decision making, creative bursts without sustained execution, cognition becomes quick but unstable. Emotional expression might show up here as anxiety without clear trigger, hypervigilance, startled response increases. So if you are feeling startled, shock, for example, mood shifts rapidly, feeling unsupported or insecure, fear of uncertainty. So therefore, the emotional tone becomes airy or ungrounded. What about hormonal activity? Because we spoke of pituitary gland. Since Lagna governs pituitary regulation, it can affect irregular sleep and wakeful cycles, irregular hunger cycles. Now we're talking about hormonal part here. Hormonal timing disturbances, adrenal style overstimulation followed by immediate fatigue. Person feels out of rhythm. Therefore, the overall pattern of Rahu in the Rahu, Saturn, or Ketu in the first house, and especially if Moon and Mercury, Moon and Venus also are in it, becomes out of rhythm. Restless body, restless mind, depleted vitality, irregular rhythms, identity feels unstable and unanchored. What happens when Pitta increases in the first house? That is to say, these two guys, Mars and Sun, are Pitta planets. What happens then? So, in the first house, when Pitta increases, that is to say, if Mars and Sun sit here, Pitta is hot, it is sharp, it is intense, it is penetrative, it is transformative. Pitta is the fire energy. Pitta converts matter into energy. So therefore, when Pitta rises in the Lagna, the system overheats physically and psychologically. First, let's see the physical expression. Because the Lagna rules vitality and appearance, heat radiating from the body. This is how it might show up, okay? Any one of this or combination of this. Redness of the face or eyes, acne, inflammatory skin eruptions, burning sensation in the head or scalp, strong hunger or thirst, increased sweating. Why? Because the heat is more. Just think of physical physics. Heat, reduced tolerance for heat, sour or sharp body odor, headaches that feel sharp or piercing, light sensitivity, sleep tends to shorten, especially even with Sun or Mars sitting in the 12th house of sleep. We'll come to that later. But even in the Lagna, sleep is disturbed. Person wakes up early and cannot return to sleep. That's the attitude of the first house, physical. What about mental? Frontal cortex. Pitta sharpens cognition. So these people become sharp. If Mars or Sun is sitting here, then it becomes sharp. Strong sense of focus, strong sense of decisiveness, strategic thinking, competitive mindset, critical evaluation. They can become very critical. Because Pitta is sharp, it can perceive things at a mental level in the frontal cortex. But when excessive, it becomes irritability, it becomes impatience, it becomes harsh speech. Sun or Mars in the first house, they become very critical and harsh in speech. Perfectionism, aggressive problem solving, anger when blocked. Mind becomes sharp but overheated. If it becomes excessive, when can it become excessive? Especially if it is sitting with Rahu or Ketu. Yeah, both are again Vata, so they will move even faster. So, when Pitta increases for emotional and hormonal now, Pitta is emotional expression may show up as anger easily triggered, frustration, intolerance, desire to control environment, competitive comparison. This become competitive, especially if Mars is there or even Sun is there. Leadership roles, competitive comparison, judgment towards self and others, overcritical of self. See where it comes from? Emotion becomes fiery and reactive. Hormonally speaking, since it is responsible for pituitary function, first house, increased metabolic drive, high stress hormone, cortisol dominance patterns. This is where it comes from. Inflammatory hormonal states, intense productivity cycles followed by complete burnout cycles. The person runs hot and driven. These are really choleric kind of people, very driven. Overall pattern of Pitta in the first house, high vitality, strong ambition, inflammatory tendencies in that area of the body, sharp intellect, identity becomes intense and performance driven. That's the Pitta excess in the first house. Now, what about when Kapha comes here? That is these three planets, Moon, Venus, and Jupiter. Dominantly, Jupiter is a pure Kapha energy. Moon and Venus also have it, like we saw earlier. What happens when Kapha increases? Kapha is heavy, slow, stable, moist, cold, and cohesive. This energy is needed. All are needed, but they should not be in imbalance. That's the only goal here. When Kapha rises in the Lagna, the entire identity slows down. Jupiter is a fatty tissue, it slows things down. Accumulate. Physical expression, therefore, will be weight gain or fluid retention, puffiness of face. People who have Jupiter in the first house are very puffy in the face. Pale or cool skin, sluggish metabolism. Whatever is in the first house will affect all other houses. Please, please remember this. Excessive sleep, heaviness in the body, slow digestion, excessive salivation, mucus accumulation, sinus congestion, reduced physical drive. The head region affects dull headaches, brain fog, sinus pressure, and thick nasal discharge. So what happens if it is too much kapha in the first house on a physical level? Now let's see the mental level. What happens at the mental level? It becomes steady attention. Kapha stabilizes thought. Very steadily they can pay attention for a great deal of time. They can become good meditators if Jupiter therefore is in the first house, because it requires steady attention and focus, patience, reliability, good memory. When excessive, however, it becomes mental dullness, slow processing speed, resistance to change. Change is Pitta. You stick one Pitta there, then it will become balanced. We shall see these balancing aspects later on. Resistance to change, low motivation, difficulty initiating action. Venus, Moon, and Jupiter, if they are conjoined or one with one another, all three, or any combination two of, it becomes like that. Difficulty initiating action. They become very entitled kind of people. Because of this, they can't initiate. There's no Mars to initiate or Sun to initiate. Mind becomes stable, but it becomes sluggish. That's the mental expression. What about emotional and hormonal? Emotionally speaking, it creates more attachment problems, possessiveness, emotional dependency on others, comfort seeking, people pleasing, avoidance of confrontation, withdrawal when hurt. Emotion becomes heavy and sticky. What about pituitary function? Slower metabolic regulation, reduced thyroid style drive, lower stress reactivity, tendency towards insulin resistance patterns, reduced reproductive drive, system conserves rather than mobilizes. It's a force. Vata, Pitta, and Kapha are three forces in the human body. So it shows up at mental, emotional, physical, and hormonal level differently. So overall, Kapha in the first house becomes stable body, heavy constitution, calm temperament, and lot of inertia present. Jupiter is a very heavy planet, very inertial. Identity becomes resistant, slow moving, and accumulation prone. Now let's wrap this up. Let's see totally in how this plays out. Okay, last slide. Comparative view of first dosha increase. So Vata, Pitta, and Kapha in the first house. For Vata, it is dry, light, and depleted. Fast but scattered mind. Emotion is anxious but unstable. Energy pattern is erratic. Pitta, not inflamed, hot and inflamed, sharp and critical, irritable and intense, and very driven. Kapha shows up in body as heavy and congested, in the mind as slow and steady, in emotion as attached and withdrawn. Energy pattern is sluggish. The deeper insight given here is because the first house represents the lens through which life is experienced. That's a good line. Any dosha increase here reshapes the entire identity. Vata distorts stability, Pitta distorts intensity, Kapha distorts movement. The symptoms show simultaneously. Physical, mental, emotional all show up together. The Lagna imbalance finally is never local. It is constitutional. It affects the entire chart. Please remember this going forward, even when we see the other houses. I shall see you in the next. Take care. Be safe.